Joseph was down and out, down in a hole. His brothers had thrown him down there, they were out of control. He was the favorite son of Jacob's old age. He was the chosen one, he sparked his brother's rage. And Jacob had loved him so that he made him a coat with the many colors of his love. His brothers were jealous, so they sold him away, and they covered his coat with a goat's blood. But Joseph had a dream that out in the field his sheep rose up while theirs bowed down. And he had another dream that the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to him. But then he became the property of Potiphar, and the good Lord blessed the house he kept. And he was a slave, but he was a rising star, and as he rose up, his father wept. The Potiphar had his house under Joseph's care. Joseph was put in charge of all his affairs. But Potiphar's wife, it seemed, had an evil eye, and deep in her heart she dreamed that with Joseph she would lie. But he would not do wickedness or sin against God, so he was accused when he declined. And Potiphar's anger rose, and he put him away where the Pharaoh's prisoners were confined. Joseph found favor in the eyes of the Lord, and all of his suffering would lead to his reward. Now one day the cupbearer and the baker for the king offended their master and were thrown to the prison ring. So one night they both had dreams, and they were disturbed when Joseph came to tend to them. He told them interpreting belonged to the Lord, and then he told them what they meant. In 2 days they would be called before the Pharaoh's throne. Each of them side by side would stand on their own. The beggar would be cut down and hung from a tree. The cupbearer would be spared, yes, he would be set free. And so Joseph said to him, please remember me when you're restored to Pharaoh's hand. But the cupbearer would forget, and it would be 2 years before he played into the good Lord's plan. After the 2 years passed, Pharaoh had 2 dreams, and none of his wise men could reveal what they did mean. Was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph's words, and when he told Pharaoh, they called him in to be heard. So Joseph interpreted, giving glory to God, and both dreams were one and the same. 7 good years would pass, and then 7 bad. Abundance followed by famine. And Pharaoh was so impressed with the wisdom Joseph showed. He gave him his signet ring, dressed him in fine robes. So Pharaoh raised Joseph up in every respect. He was put in charge with a gold chain around his neck. So Joseph set out to store all of Egypt's grain. He collected it all throughout the land, and there was an abundance stored when the famine came, according to the good Lord's plan. When Jacob heard Egypt had grain, he said to his sons, so that we may live, go down and buy us some. So 10 of the brothers went down to buy the grain, but Jacob kept Benjamin at home, he remained. And when they came before Joseph, he recognized them and accused them all of being spies. And they talked among themselves and remembered Joseph's distress, and thought it was payback for their lies. They said they were honest men, that there had been 12 of them, but one of them died, and the youngest was at home. So Joseph, he tested them, he tested their honesty. He said, leave Simeon, bring the youngest here to me. And Jacob was so upset when he got the news, he wouldn't let the young boy leave. But after supplies were gone, he finally agreed, knowing that he might be bereaved. And so Jacob said to them, if it must be so, you can take Benjamin with some gifts when you go. So the brothers took Benjamin to buy more supplies, so they could prove that they did not lie. And so when they came to him, Joseph saw Benjamin. He had to leave the room so he could cry. And when he composed himself, he fed them a feast, and they were astonished and wondered why. Now when Joseph sent them home, all their needs were met. He told his servant to place a cup in the young boy's sack. And when the morning dawned and they were on their way, he sent his steward to find the cup and bring them back. And Judah pleaded with him, 'cause they had made a deal, then any thief would become his slave. And Judah's predicament had become too real. He was sure to send Jacob to his grave. But Joseph couldn't restrain himself. He made his servants leave, and he cried out loud so that the house of Pharaoh heard. He called to his brothers saying, please come near to me. He said, I am Joseph whom you sold, but don't be grieved. It was God who sent me here to be Lord over Pharaoh's house, so that a remnant could be saved. Hurry, go to my father and tell him all that you've seen. The God of Jacob must be praised. got to Pharaoh and he told Joseph to bring down his father's house, that in Egypt they might stay. So he sent his brothers home with abundance of all good things, and he said to them, don't be troubled along the way. And when they arrived at home and Jacob saw all their goods, they told him that Joseph was alive. And when they told him all that Joseph had said to them, the spirit of Jacob was revived. Now Jacob and all his house, as was the Lord's intent, saw that Joseph delivered them, so to Egypt they all went. And the Lord spoke to Jacob and said this to him, I'll go down to Egypt with you, then bring you out again. And when Joseph saw Jacob, he fell on his neck, and with tears of joy they both cried. And Jacob said to him, I'm ready to die, now that I've seen you're still alive. Now Joseph brought Israel to the land of Goshen, where they brought their flocks and everything they owned. And Joseph told Pharaoh that his family had come, so Pharaoh came down to welcome them to their new home. And when he asked them what their occupation was, they said they were shepherds to their flocks. And when he saw that they had special abilities, he put them in charge of his own livestock. So Joseph ruled all the land. The famine was so severe, he reduced the Egyptians to servitude in the 5 remaining years. While Israel prospered in the land the Pharaoh gave to them, they bought more property and increased in the numbers there. And when the time drew near for Jacob to die, well, he rose up and blessed his sons. And when he finished, he put his feet on the bed and breathed his last as his life was done. Now when Jacob lost away, the brothers were all afraid that Joseph would pay them back for the evil things they did. But Joseph assured them that he was not God, and that the Lord had meant it all. He meant it all for good. And when his days were almost done, he spoke of the land that God had sworn to Abraham. So Joseph took an oath, and when Israel was finally set free, they carried his bones into the promised land.